Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha Hodder. This is the HodlCast, and today is July 9th, 2018, and I wanted to take a few minutes here to go through the three lawsuits that have been filed against Ripple. So there are three class actions. Each of them claim that Ripple is a security and that engaged in unregistered sale of securities and also violated the California Corporations Act. The first case filed, it was by Plaintiff Coffee, and they did a really great job outlining all of the factual background, explaining many of Ripple's public statements. And in contrast to the other two cases, the plaintiff here actually suffered a loss. He lost $550. He sold his Ripple holdings into Tether for a loss. Not one of the three cases cite another case. Like they go through all of the public statements, but I was really expecting to see some analysis on why Ripple is a security beyond the Howey test, or even to cite some things from the Howey case, like SEC versus Howey, the 1946 Supreme Court case, or Gary Plastic Packaging Corp versus Merrill Lynch. There's some great securities law there from the Second District, or the SEC versus Shavers case from Texas in 2013 that looked at whether Bitcoin was a security, or the SEC versus Glenn Turner, a course from the Ninth Circuit. So these cases are all in California, so that one would have been binding on them from 73. So I was disappointed reading that because, I really wanted to get into the meat of the analysis. Any case that is alleged that these ICOs are securities, they haven't done a great job explaining why. Jay Clayton has done a great job with his words explaining it, but it's not written anywhere. And that I have found. If you know of somewhere that I haven't seen, please put it in the comments. The second and third cases basically just copied the first case here. Zarkinov is the second case, and they don't go into a very extensive Howey test explanation. They do go through all the different facts of what Ripple did wrong in terms of raising a lot of money, and they think it's wrong. And this guy never sold his Ripple yet. He bought $636 worth of Ripple, and he continues to be a Ripple hodler, but also sues them. And then the third case, O'Connor, it also copies almost identically the language of Coffee and Zakhanov, but the information, they did add all of the SEC's guidance and quotes from Jay Clayton. So that was nice to see. But a big missing part of this class action lawsuit is they don't say how much the guy bought. They don't say whether he sold it. We know that he holds some Ripple. That's all that it says. It doesn't say how much or when. So that's kind of I would have expected people need more damages than the one person with $650 and the other two who never even realized a loss by the look of it. So the first case, the Ryan Coffee versus Ripple Labs Inc., a Delaware corporation, Xrp2 LLC, a South Carolina limited liability company, Bradley Glaringhouse, I think that's how you say it, Graylinghouse, he's the CEO, and the Does 1 through 10. So Does are just John Does that they're naming. They remain anonymous. So that case was filed in May 2013 in the Superior Court of California, San Francisco. The actual complaint alleges that there was an offer and sale of securities in violation of Section 5 and Section 12A1 of the Securities Act. Unregistered offer and sale of securities in violation of Section 25110 and 25503 of the California Corporations Code, violation of Section 13 of the Securities Act, and violation of the California Corporate Code, Section 504. And their prayer for relief, it's pretty extensive here. This is, again, the one where the guy lost $550 when he sold his Ripple and bought Tether. His prayer for relief is declaring that this action be maintained as a class action under the California Code of Civil Procedure, Section 382, and California Rule of Court, Section 3.670, certifying the plaintiff as the representative of the class and designating the counsel as counsel for the class. Declaring, that was the first one. The second, declaring that defendant offered and sold unregistered securities in violation of the Securities Act, declaring that defendant violated the California Corporate Code, that judgment be entered against defendant and in favor of plaintiff and each member of the class for damages in favor of plaintiff and class resulting in defendant's wrongdoing in an amount to be proven at trial. So when we get into that, like, they ask for punitive damages later, but I mean, if they wanted compensatory damages, it would be so small compared to the cost of bringing this suit. It's just really interesting that they would bother with this. Requiring an amount of all remaining assets and funds raised by the defendant to an accounting of all the remaining assets and funds raised by the defendants through the sale of XRP. That one I would like to see how much money they really have. Impose a constructive trust over the asset and funds raised by the defendant through XRP. So that's just like a Ripple would have to put all their money in a bank account and the court would have to determine how to divvy it up. So, that a constructive trust is usually reserved for something pretty egregious when the company is stealing money. And, I did a case of last year for constructive trust, and the facts were that someone had built the business, like literally her husband built the business. She invested $60,000 into the business. She hired 2 employees and made those employees partners, like for a lesser percent. She had 60, they each had 20. They literally locked her out of the business and went to the banks and made up stories and got into the bank accounts and changed the passwords from her. In that case, we had the right factual situation to do a constructive trust on the rest of the money that was coming in to the business. So it basically stops everything. The court holds the money until they figure out what to do with it. I don't think we have those facts here with Ripple. I'm not a fan of Ripple, but I don't think they're doing something so egregious that it requires a constructive trust. So the other thing they're asking is enjoining and restraining defendants from violating the securities law through the continued unregistered sale of XRP. Punitive damages. Punitive damages are the smackdown. Like in Florida, you can go up to 3 times the compensatory damages. Like this one's in California, I don't know if they have a cap on how high they can go. But even if he could get 3 times his whole loss of $550, the punishment aspect isn't really going to be felt by Ripple. And it's usually, again, reserved for really egregious behavior. Knowing, willing, intentional, theft, those kind of things. I don't know that we have those facts here. For pre and post judgment interest, for equitable relief, including a judicial determination of the rights and responsibilities of the parties, for attorney's fees. So that would be huge in this case if they won their attorney fees, costs of the suit, and for such other future relief that may be deemed just and proper. So that's the extent of the first case. The second case was filed on June 5th, 2018. Vladi Zakina versus Ripple Labs Inc., Xrp 2, Bradley Garlinghouse, and Does 1 through 25. Also filed in the Superior Court of California, San Mateo. The complaint alleges unregistered offer and sale of securities in violation of California Corporate Code and more violations of the Corporate Code. So they don't actually allege anything from the Securities Act, just out of California. And their prayer for relief is that this is a class action, appointing the class representative under California Rule of Court 3.764, and appointing plaintiff counsel as the lead counsel. Awarding damages in favor of the plaintiff and the class against all defendants jointly and severally and in any amount to be proven at trial, including interest thereof. This guy doesn't have any damages. He has not sold his Ripple yet. But okay. Awarding plaintiff and the class reasonable costs and expenses incurred in this action, including counsel fees and expert fees. Awarding rescission or rescissionary measure of damages. Rescission is, I think, just basically it undoes the transaction, so he could get his money back as if he never invested in Ripple. And awarding equitable, injunctive, or other relief, including disgorgement or restitution, and deemed appropriate by the court. Restitution just means putting the party back into his original position. So same thing like as the rescission, basically here. If I were the judge, I would dismiss this case as frivolous since the guy never even suffered a loss, but I must be missing something. There must be something in the California code where it's they can bring the suit even if you didn't suffer a loss just because of the unregistered sale. So then we have the third case is David O'Connor versus Ripple Labs Inc., Ripple Labs XRP2, and Bradley Garlinghouse. And this was filed recently, June 27th, 2018, in the Superior Court of California, San Mateo County. This complaint is for, again, violations of the California Corporate Code, not violations of the Securities Act. And the prayer for relief is determined that this action is a proper class action and certify that the plaintiff as a class representative and plaintiff's counsel as the lead counsel. So I think the second two cases here might just be the lawyers trying to be the lead counsel on a class action case against Ripple. That's kind of a prestigious role to get and will probably lead to a lot of other future work because you'd get a certain amount of notoriety if you did a good job on this. But again, the third case has no damage. They want to declare that Ripple is a security and defendants engaged in unregistered sale of security and violated the applicable laws. They want to award compensatory damages in favor of the plaintiff and other class members against all defendants and jointly and severally, and all damages sustained as a result of defendants' wrongdoing in an amount to be proven at trial, including interest thereon. They want to award the plaintiff and class their reasonable costs and expenses incurred in this action, including counsel fees and expert fees. They want to award rescission or rescissionary measure of damages, and they want to award equitable, injunctive, and other relief as the court may deem just and proper. So is this going to be good or bad precedent? Well, the most important thing here is that these three complaints really could give us some serious precedent, and it would be the first yet that either says that something doing an ICO is or is not a security. And we've had plenty of statements to this effect that they are securities by the SEC, but this would be the actual first court case, and it actually would bind the other Californian courts, the county courts. So that it's going to force a decision unless all three of them somehow settle. If Ripple loses, no doubt they'll appeal it, and then that decision would then bind the entire Ninth Circuit, whatever they decide at the appellate level. So the common law legal system in America, it aims to decide cases according to consistent principled rules in hopes that the future cases on similar facts should get similar results. So this principle is known as stare decisis, which is Latin for, I probably said that wrong, stare decisis, stare decisis. I don't know if how you pronounce that E, but anyway, it's Latin for stand by decisions and do not disturb the undisturbed. That almost sounds like talking about a graveyard, don't disturb the undisturbed, but it means if someone has decided on these facts in your court area, like your circuit, there's 13 circuits. If someone at your level, if you're an appellate level, you have to go by other appellate levels, or usually there's 3 levels within each of the 13 circuits. So if someone has previously looked at these facts and come out to a certain decision, the court is bound to follow that decision. And if it's done, so, and we do have a lot of instances where the circuits have big splits. Like some circuits will think it's one way, they'll interpret the law in a certain way, and they have decades of case law that has developed them into that position, and then other areas go a different way, and then the Supreme Court is the final decision maker, and their decision on something binds the whole country courts, the whole country worth of courts. So if Ripple is a security, what does that mean for the other ICOs? Well, Jay Clayton did say that everything has to be looked at on a fact-by-fact basis or case basis. Like each case is unique and needs to be looked at that way. But if we have a case that says this, anything else in California that would have similar facts would have to come out the same way. And other circuits can use California's decision as a persuasive. They're not bound by it, but they'll certainly be reading it. And when the judge is trying to interpret things, that's what they'll look to. So, if it comes out that Ripple's a security here, so would every other ICO that did the same thing that Ripple did probably would be also considered a security. And the exchanges should really be watching this closely, because if it turns out Ripple's a security, anyone who facilitated the unregistered sale of a security would also have run afoul of the SEC's regulations. So it's pretty important for the exchanges in America too, if this is determined a security. Now, everyone could argue like, oh, based on the June 14th decentralization comments, they could say, well, Ripple was a security when it was sold, but it's now sufficiently decentralized. I don't think that argument's going to fly, but because we know Ripple is very centralized, but it's the argument that people will make anyway. And then Ripple's legal defense team. This one is impressive. They hired a very strong defense team. They have the former SEC chairwoman, Mary Jo White. So she did Jay Clayton's current job from 2013 to 2017. And they also hired the former SEC director of enforcement, Andrew Sersney. I hope I said that wrong too, probably. Seresny. So Ms. White served as the SEC's chairwoman, from 2013 to 2017. And before that, she did 9 years, and she was the only female United States attorney for the Southern District of New York. And that's a pretty big district, I think, including a lot of high crime and fun, like a lot of it. It's New York. It's the head of a lot of stuff going on there. So to do that job for 9 years, like this woman is, she's pretty incredible here. And Mr. Sersney, he oversaw about 1,400 SEC personnel. He supervised the law enforcement efforts across the country, and he had a focus on financial reporting, accounting, asset management, insider trading, market structure, and foreign corrupt practices. So also certainly no slouch here. So those are the two bigwigs from the SEC defending Ripple. So, these other attorneys certainly are going to have to make some hard arguments here. Like Ripple's not going to go down without a fight on these issues. And, a little background in case you really haven't been watching Ripple or they really took off during the parabolic crypto market we had last December. I think so on December 5th, Ripple's price was 24 cents American dollars, and by January 4th, it was at $3.71. Today, July 9th, it's back down to 48 cents. So the company, it seems to be the most hated, shitcoin on the market. And there's several possible reasons for the bad reputation. And many of them are actually well outlined in the 3 lawsuits against them. Well, it was well outlined in the first lawsuit and copied in the other 2 lawsuits pretty much. But I think a lot of it stems from the company's link to Jed McCaleb. He's the programmer that created Mt. Gox and sold it to the allegedly highly unqualified Mark Capellis, and that was 3 months before the infamous hack. And no one knows exactly how the hack happened, whether it was an inside job or but there's certainly speculation that it was an inside job, so he's, just his name being involved. He was the co-founder of Ripple too. I think that and immediately put everyone on notice, like that. Well, I'll leave everyone to make up their own minds there. And it's also kind of it gets some bad heat because its blockchain is completely centralized. It's not even really a blockchain. It's called a blockchain, but it's just a completely centralized thing that the company controls. And its purpose is to help banks move money back and forth between each other, and that's fundamentally at odds with Bitcoin. That kind of is supposed to replace the banks. So the 2 companies, they're just Bitcoin's founded on some libertarian ideals, and Ripple is founded on helping the banks get better. And then also Ripple created 100 billion coins right off the bat. There was no mining of them, no proof of work. So it's just, and 100 billion, Bitcoin has 21 million, is deflationary. So just things like that. People always, mention it when they talk about Ripple. And the team is really, they put some cringeworthy stuff out on Twitter. Anytime you read it, it's they're just very, maybe I have the green-eyed monster at some of the money they've made or something, but whenever I read their tweets, it's just it just always rubs me the wrong way, no matter which one of them are tweeting it. And a lot of the times I think they make up whatever they're putting out there, that they have all these use cases, and I don't think they're real. I think they make up that they're doing some work with banks overseas. I think now they might have a few after they got that big price run up, but for the past couple of years, there's a lot of rumors saying that they don't have anything going on. It's just all hype. So I don't know that for sure. I'm just saying, what I've heard in the market, and I hope they don't, watch this and sue me for defamation or something. These are just my opinions here. And then also the co-founder, Chris Larson, he was listed in, I think it was in early January. There was an article came out on Forbes that talked about the most rich people in the world, and he was, I think, 3rd or 4th on the list. He was ahead of Elon Musk. And I remember looking at that, just thinking, what is going on in this world? Elon Musk has contributed some meaningful things to us. What has this guy done? He created 100 billion coins out of thin air. And that's crypto for you. So, some of the, and then reading through the complaints, some of the more interesting excerpts that came out of them. So in the Ryan Coffey one, the first one filed on May 3rd, they said they talked about the 100 billion XRP being created in 2013 as opposed to being mined like Bitcoin, and then 20 billion were given to the advisors, and then Ripple Labs held the other 80 billion. And defendants have earned massive profits by selling XRP to the general public in what they termed a never-ending ICO. The defendants consistently portrayed XRP as being a good investment, relayed optimistic price predictions, and conflated Ripple Labs enterprise customers with usage of XRP. They also alleged that Ripple tried to bribe Coinbase and Gemini. They said that actually Ripple offered Coinbase more than $100 million worth of Ripple to allow Ripple to start trading. And they also, started a petition with change.org saying, get Ripple on Gemini, as though the Ripple community had started this petition, but they're the ones tweeting it out. And then a Ripple executive is also reported to have asked whether $1 million cash payment could persuade Gemini to list Ripple in the third quarter of 2017 and early 2018. So that'll be interesting to see if that is true in the discovery. They'll have to depose these individuals that either made the offers or received the offers, and I'd like to read those transcripts of the deposition. So this one, the defendant, he purchased 650 XRP at a price of $2.60, and he sold them for $1.70 worth of Tether when Tether was valued at $1.03. So he had a net loss of $551.89, or 32% of his initial investment. If we look at percent-wise, 32% is a pretty big loss, but I mean, I've lost that much. I can't tell you how many times I've lost this much trading, not like in crypto, but also in the real stock market. And when I was a trader, I saw, I entered trades for people that resulted in much larger losses than this too, and no one sued. I didn't lose money on BlackBerry and think, oh, I better sue BlackBerry for, well, it's not a great analogy though, because those ones were registered securities. And I just think this is very, if people wanted to make this argument that Ripple's a security, I'm sure there's someone out there that's lost a whole heck of a lot more than $551, and that should be the lead plaintiff to get this thing kicked off the ground. But anyway, so the does listed in this complaint were co-conspirators, agents, representatives. I find this one funny, alter egos. So maybe Ripple made fake like sock puppet accounts on Twitter or something, and that's what they're alleging as a doe. I don't know for sure that one. Like we won't know till later on in the case. Employees, joint ventures of the defendants. So that's who they listed as these 10 does. And the other cases listed 20 and 25 does. And then they talk about Ripple's previous fines. So in May 2015, Ripple was fined by FinCEN for violating the Bank Secrecy Act. They had to pay $700,000, and then they had to register with FinCEN. So they got in trouble before. This never-ending ICO is described in the complaint that it's been held by all others and so the assets that Ripple said, states to people, publicly states, because there's no required disclosure statements, since they never registered anything, they can kind of make up what they disclose to people. And they say that the $20 billion provided to the founders is being held by all others. Like they include that as part of its balance outstanding, but it's not really outstanding because it's held by the founders of the company. I'm sure that Mary Jo White's going to have an issue with that. Like, what does that matter? It is outstanding if it's not held by the actual corporation. So there's some, I think, that's not a huge, strong allegation here, but anyway, it's alleged. And they also put money into some business development agreement that's still pending and include that in their outstanding amount. So their primary source of income is the sale of XRP, but they publicly focus on their enterprise solutions and saying that they actually earned $342 million through XRP sales in 2017 alone. In Q4 of 2017, XRP2 sold 71.5 million worth of XRP through exchanges and 20 million directly. And Ripple Labs aggressively markets, and so I'll just touch on that a little. What's interesting there is that they're selling it directly to exchanges. Typically, the exchanges are thought to be a secondary market, which does create a distinction between the initial sale. Say I bought Ripple from Ripple. Then I wanted to dump my Ripple. I would go on an exchange and sell it to you, the listener. That transaction's between me and you. That's outside the SEC's purview in some respects. They could, there are ways that they could attach jurisdiction onto that transaction. But so far in crypto, we have only really been looking at the initial sale from the company to the investor, not what that investor does with it afterwards. And there have been some comments stating that that's not in their purview. They don't care what happens after the initial sale. So when people are buying on exchanges, they usually think that they're buying from another person. But here, Ripple is the one selling the coins directly to the exchange. So although you're buying them on the exchange, you're buying them directly from Ripple, which would be very similar to buying them in an ICO. So it really implicates the exchange a lot more if this is an unregistered sale of security. Ripple Labs also aggressively markets XRP in a goal to drive demand and then therefore increase the price. And defendants sold at least 167.7 million of Ripple between January 1st and March 31st. So in the complaint, it alleges that they conflate saying that Ripple Labs is connected with the price of XRP, and they actually do a really good job. I'll post my blog about this in the bottom, and I've linked the complaint. They go through several statements, like a page worth of bullet points, where they say different quotes by Ripple employees, where they're saying that the enterprise solutions will have some kind of impact or will be a real use case for XRP token. And then they have a bunch of quotes from industry professionals or banking representatives that say, no, we might use the actual technology of Ripple Labs, but we won't be implementing anything to do with the token XRP. So that's what the complaint's alleging, that those two things are not linked, and any adoption of Ripple's technology by these banks or whoever is not going to have any impact on the price. It's not like they need to buy Ripple XRP to use the technology. So according to the Ripple website, Xcurrent is Ripple's enterprise software solution that enables banks to instantly settle cross-border payments with end-to-end tracking. Using Xcurrent, banks message each other in real time to confirm payment details prior to initiating the transactions and to confirm delivery once it settles. Xcurrent doesn't operate the same technology as XRP or even require the use of XRP. In short, there's no reason to believe that adoption of Xcurrent could correlate in any way with adoption of XRP. And Ripple Labs publicly limits the supply of XRP to drive the appreciation. Okay, they do that. Centralized ledger. So defendants acknowledge that development of the XRP ledger is dependent on their technical, entrepreneurial, and managerial efforts. Ripple maintains this centralized ledger, and it doesn't require any proof of work. So that will go into the Howey analysis later. It's, you're relying on the efforts of a third party with the expectation of profit, but the fact that it's centralized, they can't say it's, it's not relying on Ripple's efforts for the increase in profits, that it relies on a community effort or anything like that. It's clearly on Ripple's efforts that will make the price go up or down. Ripple Labs promised R3, which is the name of a company, a 5 billion XRP option at 85 cents per XRP. So this, I think, is very akin to a securities transaction, like offering someone an option in Europe, so in America, we use this Howey test for securities, but in Europe, the way they analyze whether something's a security or not is if it acts like a security in terms of dividends, if it offers dividends, or things like that. That makes it a security rather than this Howey test. I think it's a lot more cut and dry, and I think by offering this option, Ripple moved itself into clearly being a security by offering options in it. And certainly on the Howey analysis, offering an option it makes it more like a security, because if you're taking, what an option is an option to buy at a certain price in hopes that the price is going to be up higher later. So they gave these people the option to buy 5 billion worth of XRP at 85 cents. Those people entered into an agreement with Ripple on the idea that they can always sell or always buy Ripple for 85 cents at the hopes that maybe they can sell it for $1 or $2. So they're going to get that profit in the middle there. And that alone, I think, is pretty akin to a security here. So this is I think the most important allegation we have. And it's interestingly, Ripple, the shrewd business people they are, they did not honor this 85-cent option. When the price started to go up, they actually said that R3 did not, they were supposed to like create a network with the banks and financial institutions, and Ripple said that they failed to commercialize Ripple's technology the way that they had agreed to. So they reneged on that option after the price had soared. I'm surprised they didn't sue Ripple. XRP is a security, so they went through a pretty detailed Howey test. Hope this isn't really boring for everyone, but I find it fascinating, and it's kind of the crux of the whole question in the industry. So I'm going to go through it pretty detailed. So they said it's a purchase the purchasers made an investment of money in a common enterprise. So they invested their money, that can be either fiat, dollars, or their own Bitcoin or Ethereum, into Ripple, which is a common enterprise. The plaintiff member and other class members invested their digital currency. That satisfies the prong of the Howey. The defendants concede that they sell XRP tokens to the general public through crypto exchanges. The profits of each investor in XRP are inextricably intertwined with all other purchasers because XRP is fungible. As defendants note, it can be bought or sold on over 50 exchanges. The profits of plaintiffs and the class are also intertwined with the fortunes of Ripple Labs. Ripple Labs concedes that it sells XRP to fund its operations and promote the network. This allows Ripple Labs to have a spectacularly skilled team to develop and promote Ripple protocol and network. So that's like what they use to satisfy the first prong. They only go through 3 prongs. They combine 2 in the complaint. Like I said, they didn't use any case law. They didn't even cite the Howey test. They just went through the elements. This is not, well, who am I to say what, but I think Mary Jo White's going to have someone, they need, if someone really wants to make this argument, they need to cite some more cases than this to get it across. XRP investors had a reasonable expectation of profit. So the CEO himself publicly touted himself as very, very, very long in XRP. And all the statements about locking up the supply and the supply predictability and trusted healthy XRP markets. So actions like announcing that it had invested $25 million in XRP blockchain, those type of things were all thought to be creating the expectation of profits. And I certainly agree with that. At Ripple, they, by the CEO saying, I'm very, very long, that's telling everyone like, hey, I'm invested, you should be too, if you want to make money like me. We're investing $25 million in our blockchain. Like that only is telling people it's going to go up. And then the third thing that they talked about in the complaint was that the success of XRP requires efforts of Ripple Labs and others, and the lead plaintiff in the class have entirely passive roles vis-a-vis the success of the XRP ledger and XRP. Rather, as defendants' own marketing makes clear, the success of XRP are dependent solely on the technical, entrepreneurial, and managerial efforts of the defendants and their agents and employees. Ripple is in complete control of moving the ledger forward, so the system is entirely centralized. Ripple derives its value completely from its usefulness and the popularity of the XRP ledger, which in turn the defendant entirely, this is like a long thing, but basically saying it's entirely centralized, and the people that buy Ripple on exchanges, they have no say in whether or not this thing's going to be successful. So only the management of Ripple has a say in whether it's going to be successful. And then to get it into the securities acts, like the 33 and 34 acts, they allege that defendant used interstate commerce to facilitate the security. So as soon as you use interstate commerce, it becomes federal. And XRP are with securities within the meaning of, and then they quoted several of the securities acts, but they just listed them. I had to go look up. I'm familiar with the securities laws, but I still had to go look them up. So it would be nice if they would have just put those in the complaint, like quoted them right there, so no one has to go look up what laws they violated. But it was just basically that they did unregistered sales. And then the other thing that violated the California corporate code is that the control person, the CEO, he had the influence and could have caused Ripple to file a registration statement, and he didn't. Therefore, he aided and abetted the failure to register. So that's the crux of that complaint, and that's the best of the three. So good luck to Ripple winning this one. I think they will. So then the next case, I shouldn't predict anything. I don't know. I do think that Ripple is a security. I do think they engaged in the unregistered sale of security. But I think that the team Ripple hired as attorneys are so skilled that they are going to be able to walk all over this complaint and get around it. Whether, it's in the mutual fund industry, I had a boss that used to always say, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. And we would be selling funds. And the idea is you create a story around the mutual fund of why it's good. Who's the portfolio manager? What stocks are they investing in? What's cool about those stocks? And you talk about the overall macro impact. And whether the price was going up or down, as long as there was something interesting going on, like Adidas, instead of focusing on their financials, we focused on the fact that they had a marketing campaign where they were putting soles on everyone's feet. Like they were doing a big philanthropy effort to give shoes out around all the developing nations. So that's what you would talk to the investment advisors rather than the earnings of Adidas, which Adidas was always a pretty safe investment. But that's what is meant by don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. And here I think Ripple's going to be able to create a really good story, and the truth that they probably are a security and engaged in the unregistered sale, that I think I can't really speculate on it, so I should just shut my mouth here, but that's what I think will happen. I think the attorneys are going to be able to avoid getting that classification. And it will probably be so long tied up in court that it's not something we have to worry about tomorrow, getting the answer here. And so in the second case, they said XRP was sold through exchanges directly to investors. The second case being the Zakhanov, June 5th, 2018. They said plaintiff bought 162 Ripple XRP at 1.43. They bought 57 at 1.365 and 299 XRP at 1.092. They have not sold any. So, they spent a grand total of $636. They've incurred no loss because they haven't sold. They allege that Ripple sold $92 million worth of XRP in the fourth quarter of 2017, which on information and belief substantially dwarfs any other sources of revenue for the company. Plaintiff and the class have no ability to control the direction of the company or develop the development of the Xrp ledger. When they say that, it's like stockholders don't really have a ton of control either, but they do have voting rights when you own stock. So, well, you know, every vote matters. Like they do have some theoretical say in what happens with the company, whereas when you're a token holder, you don't get that privilege. Xrp's value is the result of the defendant's efforts. They control the supply. Ripple's CEO has concluded that our self-interest is aligned with building and maintaining a healthy XRP market. The price of Xrp is dependent on the development and adoption of the Xrp ledger, which in turn is entirely dependent on the defendants and their employees or agents. There was a lot of stuff in this complaint, the second complaint, that was word for word quoted from the first one. That was one line that was, and I didn't realize it as I was reading it. Xrp is centralized because in contrast to being mined like Bitcoin, all 100 billion XRP coins were created at once, distributed to the founders, and some were put in escrow for a never-ending ICO where they sell billions per month. Xrp Ledger is not distributed. It's a consensus project where Xrp Ledger nodes evaluate proposals from a specific set of peers called the Chosen Validators, or UNLs. The UNLs are chosen by Ripple itself based on what it deems to be trusted. Ripple says that the ledger consists of distributed servers and claims to have come up with a plan to increase decentralization and ensure that every single entity has operational control of the Xrp ledger. And defendants limited supply in an attempt to build demand for their security through aggressive marketing, such as videos showing how to buy Xrp on their website. There is a page that says the company is committed to the long-term health and stability of Xrp markets. I thought that was a really interesting thing to include in a complaint. Like, what is wrong with saying that your company is committed to the health and stability of your product? You know, that's, every company says that about themselves. It's in every mission statement you ever read, or every corporate bylaws, or I don't know. I just think that, like, oh, that's so egregious, make them pay us some punitive damages here. Like, it's grasping at straws to put something that generic into a lawsuit. Then they included some of the interviews with Garlinghouse, where he said Xrp is a more stable digital asset. And that, you know, that can be misleading. Like, so what we're looking for here, anything that actually can stand up in court, is a false and misleading statement by an insider. So the CEO is certainly an insider. So if he says that they've got a stable digital asset, that is false and misleading, because no, it has not been stable, and he should have known that the price of Xrp is not stable. So that is a real problem of what him saying that. During a Bloomberg News interview, Garlinghouse also said the reasons why Xrp has performed so well this year is that we're solving a real problem. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem around cross-border payments. There's a lot of friction, and it's very slow, expensive, and we're working with the institutions to deliver on that. So people have gotten excited. We now have over 100 customers we've announced publicly. If any of that is false and misleading, then, you know, he would be in violation if this is a security. If this is selling gift cards and it's considered not a security, he can say whatever he wants about it. But if it's a security and they don't actually have 100 customers, and they announced customers publicly that they don't have, big trouble there. He stated also, at the end of the day, the value of digital assets will be driven by their utility. If they're solving a real world problem and that problem has scale, and that problem, you know, they're real value, and there will be demand for the tokens and the price will go up. So that's kind of, I wouldn't say that if I were him, but it's more on the fence than saying 100 customers if they don't have 100 customers, which I don't think they do. I'm guessing that they don't. For XRP, he also said, this is a direct quote, for XRP, we have seen, because it's required, it's something that can really reduce the friction. And we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar problem in how cross-border payments flow. And so I think if you drive real utility, yes, there's going to be demand for that. XRP is up 100x this year. And I think it's because the problem we're solving, people realize is a real problem and a big problem. So in there, he said that they needed XRP, that it's got a use case. Well, from what I understand, the technology that they offer does not require the XRP token in any way, shape, or form, so that would be a material misleading statement. That complaint also pointed out some violations in the corporate code of California, like no registration statements filed, defendant directly or indirectly sold unregistered securities, Garlinghouse was the control person with power and influence to cause, and had the influence, he could have caused them to file a registration statement, and therefore he aided and abetted Ripple in failing to register. And then the third case, it was a lot of the same, like a lot of the exact same allegations, but also they did use the recent SEC comments about decentralization, and they used, they went through a lot of that. So they added that, and they also talked about Ripple denying. They had some quotes where Ripple outright denied being a security. On April 12th, they had an interview, they quoted a CNBC interview with Kate Rooney, who is an insider at Ripple, where she said, "We absolutely are not a security. We don't meet the standards of what a security is based on the history of court law." I think she meant case law, but they can't say that. That alone also is a materially misleading statement, because at that time, the SEC had come out with how many different statements saying that ICOs are securities. What Ripple was relying on to say what case law they were relying on, there is none that they could rely on for that. So, so that was, quite likely a materially misleading statement. So, in conclusion, this whole thing's going to be interesting to see what transpires. I can't wait to read the work of Mary Jo White in responding to this. She's been kind of someone I've looked up to for years. I don't love that she's defending Ripple, but I think she'll do a great job at defending it. And anyone can join these class actions. You don't have to be in California. I would join the first one if I were someone interested in joining them. I suspect a bigger attorney is going to come in and take over and be the lead plaintiff if these things actually get some legs. But the way that you join, you just email James at copelandlaw.com. I put it in my blog, which I'll attach to this thing at the very bottom, or you can just Google Ripple class action lawsuit. But I would definitely do the James Taylor one, because his complaint was not copied and pasted from his complaint. So anyway, hope this has been a little bit insightful, and well, thank you. Bye.